Joey here, sick with the drum club. I get with Myron Howell.
That's right.
Drummer for Jake Owen.
The drum club in this piece. Yeah, baby.
And we're actually back at the Country Stampede Festival. This is the first video one we've done too. So.
Oh, I get the honors. Woo!
Yeah. So, how'd you start drumming, man? What got you into it?
Oh man, my father and mother are really big in the musical industry, and it passed on through, you know, them giving birth to me, coming out of the womb, playing drums. So I started playing drums when I was 2 years old, and my dad was a drummer. He played with the Spinners, you know, off and on things, you know, those spot days, how we do, you know, how we do out there in the world. And he bought me a drum set because I was like killing my mom's pots and pans. So she was like, I think we might need to buy this brother some drums because I'm fixing to kill him, you know. So, and that's how it started, man. And my dad would never show me anything because he wanted me to develop my own thing instead of sound like my dad, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I started listening to records that he had, and they would put them on at me being 2 years old. They put them on, and I would be kind of like messing around until later on I started getting older and things started to develop, you know. And every time my mom would be like, hey, let's put him in drum lessons. And my dad would be like, nope, don't put him in no drum lessons. We're going to develop this thing on his own. So I started doing that and keep on. And after a while, I started figuring out how cool it was. And then how all my friends that were out riding motor bicycles and playing around in the yard, I would never go outside and play out in the yard because I was so into playing drums, you know. And then after a while, I started practicing like almost 6 or 7 hours a day. And then I would like literally start crying because my mom had to tell me to get off the drums because everybody was coming home from work. So, you know, that's just how that works, you know.
How'd you get to Nashville? What led you down there?
Well, okay, let me go back.
All right.
After me playing for so long at the house and practicing and all this type of stuff, I started, you know, playing at church, playing for different churches. And then at 9 years old to 10 years old, I started playing with well-known, like, church acts, you know, and people that has been around for a long time, you know, like Walter Hawkins, Tremaine Hawkins, you know, Thomas Whitfield. I mean, some known people, you know. And as I started playing really well with them, and it actually worked out because when I was at home practicing to records, I would practice to all the gospel singers' records. So when they would come into town to sing at our church, they'd be like, well, let's get Myron to play because he played our stuff right the last time. All right, here's a lesson, kids, that's starting from scratch. When you're practicing to CDs, you never know what's going to happen because you're practicing to a CD. Some things you think that, well, I don't think I'll ever play with these guys, but I'm going to practice their CD. Well, you keep practicing to it and learning all their music, you never know when they're going to come around and say, hey, man, we need a drummer. You come in and nail it, they hire you right on the spot. That's word of wisdom. So it happens like that, and every time I play with somebody, from me practicing at home, I already knew their stuff, you know, and they be like, okay, well, do you know this? I'll be like, yeah, I practice on that at home. Well, do you know this? And I'm like, yeah, I know that too. Do you know this? Well, we can do a whole show. Let's rock it. So I would play the whole show correctly, and, you know, and they would be like, man, we're going to get you next time. So next thing you know, word starts getting around to all these singers that they got this guy at this church that they all go to play at, and I started playing with him. So as time goes along, I play with all these people. Then I start venturing out and going to the clubs, playing there. And the same thing, start playing Brick House on the record player. And I knew that. The guy said, hey man, you know this? I'm like, yeah. You know this? I know that, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, it starts getting around and the word comes around the town. Like, man, we got this guy at this club and he plays everything correctly. And when it started filtering around. You never know who people know. So I started playing, you know, with a lot of acts. You know, I was like 21 years old when I played with Michael Bolton. You know, I was playing with Tom Jones. I played with Aretha Franklin. I played with a lot of people, man. So got into that, doing all that kind of good stuff. And then I was like, you know, there's a little void in my life. So I mean, you know, I'm gonna try something different. So I said, I'm gonna try some country. And my buddy Victor Broden, he used to play with Leanne Rimes at the time. He was the music director. And in the midst of doing all that, he was like, I called him up. I said, hey man, I want to try some of that country. He was like, dude, are you serious? I'm like, yeah man, I'll try it. He said, cool. So a year goes by, he calls me out the blue. And in the midst of him calling me out the blue, he said, hey man, I got this country act, I want you to try it. And I said, cool, we'll send me the music. I said, but you know, if it's that twang, I'm not gonna do it. He's like, no, I think you're gonna like this. So he sends me the CDs, I like it. And for the day of rehearsal, didn't nobody in the band know who I was but Victor. So they were like, well, who's this guy we get from Memphis that we heard so much about? And he said, oh, you'll see him when he comes in. So when I walk in, first day of rehearsal, I start setting the drums up. So in Nashville, a lot of people use cartage, which means you pay people to basically come set your stuff up. And in the midst of them setting your stuff up, you know, you just think that's what you do. So in the midst of that, what happens, we walk in and it's time for us to start. So they was like, well, where's the drummer at? And they was like, there he is right there. And they were like, that black dude? Like, yeah, that's him. So they didn't have any clue that it was me, I was a drummer. Things started progressing and I got in with Jake and then stuff started just doing really good. And man, I just been liking it ever since. So that's how I got into country.
Now with playing like Michael Bolton, Tom Jones, and even playing in church, what does that lend to your current gig with Jake?
You know what? Honestly, a lot, because what's cool about it, the whole situation with that would be these guys are so particular about what their music sound like, you know, and sometimes with this gig it's so laid back and so free fall, you know, where things are consistent, don't get me wrong, but it comes into play for, with these guys back in the day, they would throw songs at us like at the drop of a dime, and we had to learn them really quickly, you know. And with that, with this gig comes with that, it comes with the mind preparation, where you being able to, you know, do stuff on the fly, you know what I mean? Because with these guys here, they be like, hey man, do you know this country song, blah blah blah, and me not being, you know, a country fan, it challenges me to learn my part better, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's a blessing in disguise, if you will, from being with those guys, you know. And like I said, I think I have to say with which, like, my best teacher of being with professional people was playing with the Barcades. And I think that right there was my hardest gig ever. These guys been around for 40 years, and oh my God, man. If anybody has never listened to the Barcades, please download Barcades music and go to see a show if it comes near you. You're gonna get your socks knocked off, and I mean that. But it like showed me where I can take a needle and some thread and take songs and sew them together. When Jake says, all right, this is what I'm gonna do, a show and blah blah blah, most guys in the country world, they'll play a song and end it. Me, I don't do that. I take my songs, what I done from the Barcades, I take my songs and I sew them together, where you create no dead space, where you keep your audience on your feet. You see what I'm saying? The worst thing you'd ever do is lose your audience with so much room in between songs, because people come to pay their money, they want to come to get their socks knocked off, and they want to have a good time. So you sew the songs up, you don't give them a breather, then they be just constantly having a good time, and they don't know what hit them. All right.